Armageddon, what had been a fortress of survivors ended up in the hands of mankind itself. Just 3 days ago, Shizugu had just gutted the sharks he had caught and was planning to transport them to the bazaar for sale, but just turned his head. A bizarre scene happened. The original loss of internal organs of the shark was back from the dead, one by one, lying on the board alive and well. He was utterly bewildered by the scene before him. In 30 years of shark hunting, he had never encountered anything like this. Quickly, he sought out his son, Trailer, the sheriff of the small town, was equally shocked by the sight of the twitching dead fish, but he knew one thing: everything strange fears fire. So, Trailer decided to burn them with gasoline. Just as he was about to act, he noticed the trunk of the police car shaking violently. Inside was a rabid dog he had just shot dead. Cautiously, Trailer opened the trunk, only to see the rabid dog had come back to life and was lunging at him. Fortunately, Trailer was prepared and fired his gun immediately. Shizugu, who has been killing sharks for over 30 years, is also ruthless, throwing all the dead fish and dog carcasses into a barrel and burning them. As Trailer was about to resume his patrol, he received a call from the station. It turned out that his 2 sons had gotten into trouble again. At the moment, the 2 were being held in a holding cell with another prisoner inside spitting blood on the floor. When Trailer arrived, his sons quickly explained that they didn't beat up the man. Just as the officers were about to check on the man's condition, he suddenly rose from the floor and attacked a nearby officer in a frenzy. Trailer rushed forward to pull the man away, but the man had already mutated and was in a state of madness. In the struggle, the man bit Trailer's eldest son, Joseph. Seeing the officer also bitten in the chest, Trailer had no choice but to grab a baton and start beating the man. Finally, with the combined efforts of several people, the man was subdued and locked up again. They naively thought the man was just a lunatic, not realizing he had already turned into a zombie. Trailer's wife, Joss, upon seeing their son injured, immediately took him to the hospital where she worked, but the hospital was already overwhelmed, with most patients suffering from bite wounds. The head nurse received a distress call from one of the wards, reporting that a patient had suddenly gone berserk and started biting the medical staff. The city's residents had no idea that a terrifying zombie virus was already spreading. Meanwhile, Trailer received another emergency call from a man who said his wife had been acting strangely since giving birth. When Trailer rushed upstairs, the scene before him made cold sweat run down his back. The woman was eating her newborn baby. Seeing Trailer appear, the woman immediately lunged at him in a frenzy. During the struggle, Trailer was accidentally bitten on the arm by the woman. He kicked her away and quickly escaped to his car. Just as he was about to bandage his wound, the zombie chased him out of the room. The man who had called for help was still trying to understand what was happening when the zombie pounced on him, tearing at him viciously. It was only after Trailer reloaded his rifle that he was finally able to put the zombie down for good. Just as Trailer was taking the man to his wife's hospital, he received a message from his wife.
She's saying, "Don't get bit, Chief. Don't get bit."
At that very moment, Trailer encountered an ambulance on the road. The driver had been bitten to death, and a figure emerged from the vehicle. It was his wife, Joss. Without saying much, Joss grabbed Trailer's gun and shot the driver dead. Joss wanted to free Joseph, who was locked inside the ambulance, but just then, a zombie suddenly appeared behind Joseph. Joseph kicked the zombie out of the ambulance, but unfortunately, the zombie fell right on top of Trailer. As Trailer reached for the fallen gun, a man wielding a chainsaw suddenly appeared. It was his father, Shizugu, bringing reinforcements. After dealing with the zombies, they burned them to ashes. Time quickly moved forward 6 months. By now, the town had already been overrun by zombies. By all accounts, Trailer and Joseph should have been bitten and infected by the zombies, and would soon transform, but most likely it has something to do with their Indian heritage. One side of the family, nothing happened to the native Indians, but other races were not immune to the virus. Under Trailer's leadership, they established a survivor camp in the city, surrounded by walls. The only way in was a heavily guarded bridge, with a large meat grinder at the end, making the security virtually impenetrable. But on this day, when Joseph returned from a supply run, he brought back 3 survivors. The man was holding a frail-looking girl and told everyone that the woman with them had just caught a cold. However, the observant Lysol wasn't convinced. He pulled back the girl's blanket and found a bite mark on her neck. Realizing he was exposed, the man tried to leave but was struck down by Lysol. Joseph tried to intervene, but Lysol, in his anger, berated him. accusing him of disregarding the safety of the other survivors. People without antibodies are infected only to die. Lysol handed the man a knife, demanding that if he wanted to enter the camp, he had to kill his own daughter. Unable to bear it, Joseph punched Lysol. Just as the two brothers were about to fight, Trailer appeared in time. After understanding the situation, Trailer decided to take in the other two survivors. As for the infected girl, but everyone's attention seemed focused on the infected girl, ignoring the other woman who had come with them. The darkening wound on her abdomen was proof that she had also been bitten by a zombie. Without immunity, it was only a matter of time before she turned. The other man, unable to bear the thought of losing his daughter, chose to commit suicide in a bathroom stall. However, the zombie virus had already entered his body, and before long, he too turned into a zombie. Trailer quickly dealt with him once he received the news. Lysol is very upset with his father for admitting uncertainties into the community, which he believes puts the camp in danger. This is supposed to be just an Indian community, and while they're immune to the virus, the walkers will still use them as rations. If one of the people they took and turned into a zombie, the entire community would be in grave danger. But Trailer was equally resolute in his decision. In the end, father and son parted ways on bad terms. Lysol, filled with anger, turned to alcohol to drown his sorrows. Fueled by the liquor, his gaze fell upon the newly arrived woman. Joseph intended to comfort his brother, but as soon as he arrived, he heard a scream. Turning towards the sound, they realized that the woman who had just come in had turned into a zombie, her mouth chewing on parts of Lysol's body. Although Lysol narrowly escaped with his life, he lost much of his happiness. He blamed Joseph for bringing these people, believing that they were the reason for his current misery. Taking advantage of a distracted Joseph, Lysol stabbed him in the stomach, then locked Joseph in the bar with the zombies. Soon after, horrific screams echoed from the bar. By this time, Trailer and the others had returned to the camp after a supply run and noticed something was wrong with the unguarded gate. Through the intercom, they learned from a Jen about the situation inside. Despite the dangers, Trailer and Jizugu decided to take the risk and go in to rescue a Jen and the other survivors. Their companions saw that the situation inside was far worse than they had imagined, with corpses strewn everywhere. To draw the zombies away from the entrance, they turned up the car's music to full volume and opened the gate. As expected, the zombies, hearing the noise, rushed toward the car. Taking advantage of the distraction, they quickly dashed into the camp and joined up with Joss and the others in the basement. Debating right or wrong was now meaningless. The immediate priority was to leave as quickly as possible. However, Joss and the others had suffered minor injuries, slowing down the evacuation. The gate couldn't hold back the frenzied zombies, and the sound of gunfire quickly attracted more of them. Jizugu had no choice but to order the car to go ahead. In the chaos, several survivors were thrown from the vehicle and immediately became zombie food. Amid the chaos, those who didn't manage to escape took refuge in an underground passage, but there were too many zombies, and soon the wooden barricade was also broken down. To protect the others, Trailer used his body to hold off the zombies. Although he wouldn't be infected and turn into a zombie, he could still be torn to pieces by their bites. In the end, Trailer sacrificed his life to buy time for the others. The camp was completely destroyed. As Jizugu was preparing to drive away, he suddenly received a radio transmission from Lysol. Lysol, through a woman, informed Jizugu that many survivors were still waiting to be rescued at the church. Although he knew it was a trap, Jizugu still decided to go and save them. As dawn broke, Jizugu and the others drove to the church. Inside the church, Lysol and his men were dousing the place with gasoline, intending to burn the survivors to ashes. Just as they were about to ignite the gasoline, Jizugu arrived in time. But Lysol was nowhere to be seen. Meanwhile, outside, Joseph's wife was about to give birth, with he standing guard over them. Suddenly, a steel knife freezes through his stomach. And the one who sneaks up behind him is no other than Lysol, who was nowhere to be seen. Lysol's target was Anna, who was about to give birth, as she was one of the culprits for sheltering the survivors. Under Lysol's threat, Joss had no choice but to put down her gun. She couldn't understand how her son had turned into this. Lysol opened the car's trunk and released a zombie from inside. Just as Anna was in grave danger, Joseph arrived from the church in time to save his wife from the zombie. But unfortunately, Anna had already been bitten on the neck. Faced with the deranged Lysol, Joseph, having reached his limit, stabbed him. Shizuku then fired a shot into the sky, immediately drawing the nearby horde of zombies. And so, Lysol became a meal for the zombies. The group made their way to the lake, planning to escape by boat, but the horde of zombies was already closing in. To buy them some time, Shizuku chose to stay behind and hold them off. Although Shizuku fought valiantly, the sheer number of zombies was overwhelming, and he too fell to the horde. On the boat, Anna successfully gave birth to a baby, but because she had no antibodies, after confirming that the baby wasn't infected, she asked Joseph to end her life. In the end, only 2 people and a baby survived from the large community. If Joseph hadn't saved those 3 survivors, would the story have ended differently?